Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. If you're so inclined, please join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would now entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Ellerby, seconded by Pritchard. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, we'll move to public participation. And the first item is appointments to boards and commissions.
I would like to make a nomination for the Planning Commission for Michael Smith, and for Board of Zoning Appeals, Philip Russo and Chadwick Smith. For Personnel Appeals Board, Brian Martin. For Recreation Board, Adam Beisel. Historic and Architectural Preservation Commission, Brad Spurlock. Civil Rights Commission, Gretchen Zilkowski and Catherine Lucas. For McCullough Hyde Hospital Board of Trustees, Amy Longcamp and Sybil Miller. Environmental Commission, John Ralinowski and Peggy Brandstrader. Housing Advisory Commission, Shauna Rosenberg, Kathy Lucas, and Ann Bailey. Police Community Relations and Review Commission, Daniel Umstead, Fritzy Wellman, Eamon Wang, and Alan Ratliff. Public Arts Commission of Oxford, Rebecca Howard, Robert Benson, Carol Katz, Joe Squantz.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Pritchard. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item is a public hearing on the 2023 tax budget, and I would recognize Joe. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded by Pritchard. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So for everybody who's watching, this is a public hearing, and so everything is going to be focused on the presentation, and then we allow public comments on that issue, and then we will go about closing that issue, and then we'll move on to other public comments.
Thank you. This is the annual tax budget to be submitted for the coming year to the Butler County Tax Commission in accordance with requirements stipulated in the Ohio Revised Code. Approval of the legislative bodies required by July 15th and is due the county by July 20th. The tax budget required by the county is essentially a preliminary budget estimate for next year. Beginning in August, we'll undertake our normal detailed line item analysis and preparation. We will spend about 3 months of intensive preparation for our detailed budget, and the final approval budget will then be submitted to the County Budget Commission to replace these preliminary estimates. The tax budget provides a first glimpse of the 2023 general fund budget. We prepared the budget with approximately 0% change from the 2022 amended budget, except for a few items that I'll mention. And Exhibit B tells about gives a glimpse of the general fund, and C are all the other funds. I'll just concentrate on the general fund tonight, since the tax budget is really looking to make sure you have enough property tax to pay any general obligation debt. So on the revenue side, from our 2022 estimate, which was the 2022 budget, plus any encumbrances carried over from last year, or any supplementals that we brought in for this year, the first decrease from that for the 2023 budget's a federal grant that we received, $31,451, and that's for the police department, and that'll be spent this year. And return of advance from the capital improvement fund. Since we don't know what the actual capital improvement funds are, we're not budgeting in advance at this point, so it would zero out. So it's a $276,500 difference. Return of advance for Oxford area trails. There's $11,059 in the budget estimate that's not in the 2022, so that's an increase in revenue of 1159. The advances from Oxford Area Trail, this year we advanced $2,871,377, and in the preliminary budget we only needed to advance $560,000, so that's about $2.3 million decrease. And another advance from the High Street Pedestrian Fund. In this year's budget, we have 400, and in next year's it'll be about 366, 530, 350.98. But that probably will be taken care of before the end of the year. But I just included it in this budget estimate. Excuse me. On the expenditure side, expenditures are decreasing by about $2.8 million. Law enforcement decreased by $67,481. That was an encumbrance of last year that we're bringing into this year's budget. Public health and welfare, $24,473. That was for a one-time expense that we had this year for that we won't have next year. So that's $24,473. Leisure time activities. In the aquatic center, we had a decrease of $1,074, and recreation programs of $4,581. And again, those were encumbrances carried over from 2021. Community environment, $100,000 decrease, and again, that was a encumbrance that we had for the comp plan that we're doing this year that will be spent this year. So we won't have a reoccurrence next year. On the general government side, Human Resource Communications Assistant Manager Department, $2240 decrease. Municipal building, there's $3,088 decrease. In engineering, there's $19,519. And again, those were just encumbrances from last year. On the transfer and advance side, we had to increase the transfer to the Aquatic Debt Service Fund by $5,800, and that's to meet our debt service in 2023 is $5,800 more than it is in 2022. And in order to have a balanced budget going into the tax budget, I decreased the amount of money transferred to the Capital Improvement Fund by the same amount. So those two wash each other out. Advance to the Aquatic Center Capital Improvement Fund, $11,059 in the tax budget. And again, that should be taken care of this year, so that won't show up in next year's budget. The advance to the Capital Improvement Fund, again, I explained that the revenue wasn't coming back, and we're not going to do the advance, so that's the offsetting expenditure. In the Oxford Area Trails Fund, again, the same thing. There's a decrease of $2.3 million. That's because we're advancing less next year. Again, that's offset by the revenue decrease, so those wash out. And the same with the pedestrian High Street Fund of $33,649.02. And again, these are preliminary numbers. It's not binding us to anything for our actual budget next year, but again, this is a procedure we have to do by Ohio Revised Code. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this text budget? Is there anyone on council has questions or concerns? Thank you.
Motion to close public hearing?
I would accept that motion to close public hearing. Is there a second? It's seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, and just to let you know, since I went through this now, when we have the second reading, I'll say nothing at that point.
I think you're good. All right, we'll move then to public comments. And anyone wishing to address council about items that are not on the agenda or are not on the consent agenda, come forward at this time. Give us your name and address for the record. Come on up. And we'll give you 5 minutes to say whatever you want.
Good evening. I'm Carol Michael, 409 East Chestnut Street. And It's good to be here and see all of you, and thank you all for your public service. I'm here tonight to express a concern. During ShareFest in May, I spent a lot of time circulating in the Mile Square, and I became aware very quickly that there was an absence of signage, and I was having difficulty navigating. I knew some major streets, but I didn't know all the streets.
Street signs, yeah.
So this morning I decided to document. So first of all, I went north and south. On South Campus, there were 3 intersections missing street signs in a row south of High, 3 in a row north of Church, and 1 north of Sycamore. On Poplar Street, 1 street south of Sycamore was missing, and the second one north of Spring. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th intersections south of Spring on Poplar were missing signs. On Main Street, 1 north of Chestnut to the west, and 2nd and 3rd to the east. There's no sign at Spring and Main. The 1st north of Spring, and 2nd north of Spring, and 2nd north of High. At Main and Sycamore, there was no sign indicating it was Main Street. On Beach Street, the 2nd Street north of Spring, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th north of High were missing any signage at all. On College, 1st and 2nd south from Sycamore, there were no signs, and the 1st Street south from Spring Street. And on Locust, there was no sign at High and Locust. So then I decided to go east and west for a couple of streets. On Vine Street.
Oh, Vine Street, there's almost none.
On Vine Street, 1 street south of Sycamore, east or west on Vine, I went through 8 intersections with no signs at all. No signs. And then on Withrow, there were 3 streets with no signs until Main. So you get the idea.
We do.
I counted all these up. Our great city is missing at least 32 street signs in the Mile Square. And I find this totally unacceptable for a great city like Oxford. I think our permanent residents and our visitors deserve a full array of street signs, whether that means more sophisticated hardware to allay tampering and keep them where they are, or elevate them so that they're not tampered with. But I think city council and city government needs to solve this problem.
Carol, thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to bring it up in my comments at the end. Because I went down Vine Street and I couldn't keep track of which street I was at, and I realized none of them said
Really?
Vine Street.
Yeah.
So could you leave that list with the service director, Mike? Get her list. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to address council? Mr. Amarantos, come forward.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Amarantos. My brother and I have been here in Oxford for almost 40 years now. We are the proprietors of Skipper's Pub uptown and SDS Pizza for maybe the last 15 or so years. There's 2 beautiful ash trees that aren't so beautiful anymore in front of Skipper's, in case nobody has noticed them. They're probably close to 100 years old. For the last 5 to 7 or 8 years, we've been trying to maintain them, take care of them, keep them alive as long as possible. Long story short, they're totally hollow on the inside. They become a nuisance. We don't want anybody to get hurt. I've been talking with the city about it for several years now. And long story short, they're coming down. So that's going to happen probably in the next 15 days or something like that. And the cost is being worked out between the city and us. Our end, since actually the patio at Skipper's is public fair? Right. Public right-of-way, and we were grandfathered in 38 years ago. So there's a wrought iron fence around there that's probably maybe as old as the trees, if not older, that we installed back then. It's been painted many, many times. So we're trying to get bids to get the trees down. Once the trees come down, all the roots have to come out. We have to grind 6 to 18 inches below. New concrete has to be poured. But while we were talking about all of this, we had asked, the fence out there is like 5-foot sections. And we said, hey, could we take down a section of the fence for 2 reasons. One, to get the trees taken down, make it easier for the people to access. We're actually closing the street. The bagel shop's gonna close, we're gonna close, there's to be a crane there and all of that. And it'd be much easier if you could like remove the fence and they could work right from that area. So we were told that if you remove a piece of the fence, there's a law, statute, or whatever that says, once you remove it, can't put it back up again. So I don't know if anyone's aware of anything like that. So we said, well, there's 2 reasons. First, we'd love to take the fence down, send it out, do a few repairs on it, where the spikes are. A couple of them will come off. And second of all, they have the chemicals nowadays that can get it back down to bare metal, and then you have it refurbished, and it looks brand new, and it's pretty, and everybody likes it. So we're kind of at an impasse right now. The last couple days I spoke to a few people, and they said, why don't you go to city council? So what and I know things don't move at the rapid speed in Oxford at times, you know. We have to do what we have to do, but I'd really like it to maybe come before you people and ask somebody to say, hey, I'll make a motion to, you know, there's really no business in Oxford this summer.
So your plan is to put the fence back exactly the way it is, right?
Exactly the way. It might have a new bolt, but there's no design difference, no changes, no anything at all.
We'll talk to Andy about this.
Can you do that and?
Yeah, I'm not
see
familiar
what's-
with the section.
Yeah, see what's necessary to make it happen, so he can take his tree down.
If we
and put
need
the
to bring
fence.
something to council, we'll do that quickly.
Thank you.
All right,
We'll get on it.
Yeah, that's
as
supposed to be
fast as
done
we
in
can.
about like 12 days or something like that. It's all scheduled up with the city and
We'll get
everything
on it.
else.
Thank you, Andy.
So I appreciate your time, and everybody, thank you very much, and it's nice to see everybody.
Thank you, Andy. Anyone else?
Carissa Chanel, 6 Old Stone Court here in Oxford. I just noticed over the past couple of meetings, and maybe you guys can answer this at the end when you guys get to your comments, that there's been some reference to possibly separating from the township or removing the city of Oxford from the township. And I was wondering just what that means for us as taxpayers, if the city does, if I'm reading what you are kind of hinting around at during the past couple of meetings, what that means for us as taxpayers. I don't know one way or the other, what it means for our friends and families that live in the township, if it'll affect their services or not. And what's causing this topic to keep arising? Is it something that's been on the city's agenda for a while? Is it something that's been mutually discussed between the township and the city? What's the benefit, or what are the pros and cons? Or is it strictly an emotional response to some recent conversations about the solar and wind project and the township deciding to keep their police force? So if you guys could clarify that later on, I'm indifferent one way or the other. I would just like some more information before we go down that road and what that does for us as citizens within the community.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Could you address that at the end? Thank you very much. Anyone else? We really appreciate you all coming. We appreciate those who come to speak before us. We will move then to the consent agenda, and can I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
It's been moved. and
Second.
Seconded by Councilor French. Are there any items to be removed? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. It is agreed to. We'll move then to resolutions. If you would be kind enough to read our first one.
A resolution authorizing the School Resource Officer Program Memorandum of Understanding between the Talawanda City School District and the City of Oxford, and authorizing the city manager to sign the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the city.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Chief, welcome.
Thank you.
Just a rundown.
Sure. This is our annual contract renewal with the Talawanda City School District. We provide 3 school resource officers in the district. They're stationed at Kramer, Talawanda Middle School, Talawanda High School. They work hand in hand with the administrators there to provide a safe environment and really work on building relationships with the kids. We have a very positive relationship with the school district. So they're much more than just an armed security guard there. They work on emergency planning and work with the school, and relationship building, as I mentioned, is a big thing. So the language in the proposed contract is similar to the language that's been there for a few years. The price, we raised the rate to $31 an hour, which it was $30 last year. So it's a small increase, to help cover our contract costs. So I think that's, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Super. Thank you. Anyone from the public like to address this item? Seeing none, any questions or comments from council?
I'll just say that at a police commission meeting, a couple meetings ago, I had the opportunity to hear Officer Butler talk about the work that he does as an SRO, and was impressed with what he does. I was curious about the fact that it said that raising it from $30 to $31 would increase the reimbursement to the city. What amount does the city put in over and above that $31 an hour?
So that would be their contracted rate of pay, which I don't have in front of me,
Yeah,
but it's in the past that's covered about like 78%. So I don't know if that's still accurate, but the officers are making more than that per hour. But what it does is, we would have to respond to those schools anyway. So we're sharing the cost of what it takes to put an officer there. And of course the city's incurring costs such as, cruisers and computers and that type of stuff and training. But it's and fringe benefits, yeah. So there's a lot of cost to the city as well. It's a similar contract to the sheriff's office.
Okay.
Yeah,
We try to be
it's something
competitive.
we came up with several years ago, and we feel it's a fair reimbursement, even though it doesn't cover 100% of the cost, but they're not there 100% of the time either. Schools are closed during holidays and other times, but I think it works for both the city and the school district.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Reminder to all in council to speak close to the microphone so that our feed will pick it all up. Any other questions, Dave?
So I guess I would just say that this has become fairly routine for us, and I think it's a really well worked out arrangement, both financial and institutional. I think obviously the events of the last few weeks have shown that unfortunately we live in a world in which having security in our schools is paramount, and I'm grateful that the situation we have is highly trained Oxford police officers in the schools. So I think that as much as that can give people a sense of security, that we have really top people, again, in that emergency, but also with everything else that they're doing as school resource officers that goes far and above just school security. It's hard to feel secure about anything these days, but this is something that Oxford and Talawanda can do together to make us feel as safe in our schools as we reasonably can.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just like to, this is my first go-round approving this, and for those who may not know, my work brings me very close to working with school resource officers and school safety in general. So I was, granted, I don't have a depth of knowledge in other contracts, but this looks as best in class as it could possibly be. I loved everything about how you've worked it out, and I have to say, from knowing folks who teach in Talawanda, just huge kudos to your officers for really making themselves, kind of like what we're alluding to, not just hi, I'm here to be an armed member of the school community, but to really embed themselves in the school and the culture, and to do a lot of work with the students and outreach into the community. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else? Are you ready to vote? Thank you, Chief. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The resolution is adopted. Move to the second.
A resolution authorizing the city manager and the chief of police to submit a grant application for the Community-Oriented Police Services Hiring Program grant with the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Been moved.
Second.
Seconded. Thank you very much. Chief?
Thank you. This is a grant application for hiring. We're always looking for different ways to supplement city funds, and we're applying. This is for permission to apply for a COPS grant. They would provide up to $125,000, and then we would obviously have to keep the officers on longer than that, and also have matching costs. But this is something, you know, we've talked about adding staffing, and this is just one method of trying to get that. And there's different categories we have to apply for. So we did our best to fit it into drug-related violence to try to work that way towards the grant. We do have one other grant application out to the state, kind of similar, but there was not time to bring that before you. So obviously, if we get awarded that, we would bring it in and ask for your permission to accept it as well. But this is just an attempt to help supplement city funds.
Thank you. Would anyone from the public like to address this item before council? Seeing none, comments or questions from council?
When you say directed towards drug-related violence, does that mean just the grant is saying like we have an increase of this and this is why we need someone?
Yeah, there were different categories that we didn't, we didn't always fit the category. We thought this was our best opportunity. We've not been successful with the COPS hiring grant before that I'm aware of, or well before my time. So we're just trying different, looking at different statistics and trying to fit it in a category. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't get it before just because the crime level wasn't as high as other places?
Yeah, I mean, other cities have been awarded it. We have not. So it's just a different way of just this is the category we applied for because we felt that we could show that there was increase in overdoses, and we've had violence related to drugs that we could point to, and we used to have a undercover officer assigned to a task force, but we had to pull that because of staffing a few years ago. So that was our method of, if we can get someone that would backfill that position, we could go back to that task force, if that makes sense.
Any additional questions?
Question, so if you were to get funded, and then they provide, is it 75%, I think it is? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, okay, so then, and then the city has to pay for 12 months beyond the life of the grant, at least a year of hire for the officer. So do we know that we have the funds to be able to do that in the third year?
Well, what I would say is that every year we return a lot of money back to the general fund that we don't use in our budget.
Okay.
So I think in talking with the city manager and finance director, yes, we'd be able to support that.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And I think this will be relevant kind of leading into the next resolution, which we'll get into further, but I mean, I know that substance abuse has gone up. I mean, it's so obvious in the neighborhood. So I hopefully you get it.
Sure, thank you.
Are you ready to vote? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted. We'll move to the third resolution.
A resolution accepting the bid and authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Jackson Construction Company for the construction of ADA sidewalk ramps and alternate sidewalk for a total not to exceed $22,451.46.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilor French. And welcome, Mike.
Good evening.
So I've seen the little marks on a lot of sidewalks, so you must be getting ready.
There's a lot of work going on in town.
Yes, sir.
So pardon my voice, I'm fighting a little summer head cold here tonight. For this agenda item, historically we've used CDBG funds to install or improve handicap ramps in the city sidewalk system. In April, council approved a resolution to use ARPA funds to finish that project so that CDBG could use for other tasks in the future. So staff prepared plans and specifications to do that. And as an alternate, we also did plans for a new sidewalk on the west side of North Lucas Street to go to Kramer School. This has been a frequently mentioned deficiency, and it is part of the study area of safe routes to school. We advertised for bids. We had 2 bidders, one being Jackson Construction, who already has 2 contracts with the city. So they are already mobilized, they're here, and they gave us very attractive pricing where we can afford to do the alternate sidewalk if you desire. So we recommend doing that and recommend you approve this contract. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Would anyone from the public like to address this item? Please come on forward. Come on. Give us your name and your address, and we'll give you 5 minutes to tell us everything you want.
Oh, I'll talk fast.
Okay.
I waddled fast to get up here. I am Janet Fazell. I was born in Oxford, and I live at 341 North Locust Street. I walked past my house my whole life to go to Kramer School. And I don't know if you all remember, because you're all so much younger than me, but Oxford used to be a tree city. And the trees on North Locust Street used to arch right over the street. And what's proposed on my side of North Locust Street is sidewalks to be installed in an area in the 26 years that we've lived in the house. It's never been a problem that there's not been connectivity on that side of the street. I am concerned about not only the trees that'll be lost when the sidewalks will be installed, but also when you're on that side of Locust Street, down by the Locust Street building of McCullough High Tri-Health, there's an island there, and it just seems like a very awkward place for little children to cross the street to get to Kramer School, when the other side of the street is much better suited for that sort of traffic. So it would probably increase my property value to have sidewalks on my side of the street, because my house is known as the house where the sidewalk ends. But I will tell you, I think that we should be more concerned about other things in Oxford, and I think that we should be replacing some trees as they keep coming down. And if you've lived in Oxford very long, and again, you're all much younger than me, I've lived here a really long time, but we lost lots of trees, and we will lose a significant number of trees if this proposed sidewalk install occurs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to address this item before you? Mike, did you want to make a comment before I?
Just a reminder that the city is a Tree City USA community, and our internal goal for any tree we take down, we plan to plant 1.5 trees. So we are planting more than what we are removing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselors, discussion or?
So as someone who was involved and worked with Talawanda and parents to do the safe routes to school, which was, I was looking at a picture here on the web. My daughter was small. It was a long time ago that we did it. And that begins with kind of a needs assessment. You look at the schools, because the premise is if you have a school that's walkable, you need to analyze what are the barriers to stop people from being able to walk to school. And we're super fortunate to have an elementary school in town, but it's not the easiest to walk to, and there's a number of barriers. The intersection at Locust and Church is one of them, but it's not the only one. So at that time, and again, it was a group of parents and city staffers who were city engineers. I think Sam took part in that. And we did identify this as a deficiency. I think there's a reason why the sidewalk hasn't been on that street, because of the slopes. It's technically more difficult than it is in other places. But I'm really excited that something that was put on the plan as being, this is a need we need to address. even if it takes a while, if we can find the funding source. And I'm super sensitive to the idea that in the front yard, and I think that I know that the same will work with landowners to try to design it in a way that's sensitive and to replace the trees. But I think you're right. I think we need to look at Locust and Church, because I think that's not a particularly walkable intersection. But building the network is one little piece at a time, and when you have an opportunity to fill a hole. So thank you, Mike, for putting that on there.
Okay, other comments?
I have a couple questions. Do I need to recuse myself since I live across the street?
There's really no requirement that you recuse yourself. You don't have any really specific interests that would be really unique in any way that differs from the rest of the members. So there's no need. You surely can if you feel the need to, but legally there's no requirement.
And then the trees, when they're replaced, do they go in the same area, or do they go somewhere else in the city?
We would work with the property owners. If they desire trees to be replanted, we would do that. Some owners do not want trees back in their yard. And then we have a list of places where we would like to plant more trees. So we will work with the property owners.
And this project is being targeted because of the elementary school and the connectivity right at
Yes.
this moment?
And it's been noted as a deficiency in the Safe Routes to School study area. So we have an opportunity to correct that, and Council's goal has been to complete the city's sidewalk network where we have missing segments. So that's what we're doing.
And I think everyone's on the same page that we need that connectivity, and sidewalks are good. Always in favor of sidewalks. There were some concerns raised in the neighborhood as far as there's a lot going on right there, right? There's a lot going on that people don't even realize what is happening this beyond the bushes and the woods, right behind on the west side of Locust. So before we make any comments as far as like NIMBYism or anything like that, this ain't it. But there's a lot of concern about what will happen when this connectivity happens, and then connecting it to what is happening kind of right behind where Ms. Gazelle lives. So I just wonder, is there any way that until that situation improves, is there any way this project could be put off?
We have deadlines published in our specifications. So the contractor could claim damages against the city if we did not follow through once the contract's awarded. I'm not prepared to answer that question. I didn't anticipate that tonight.
Okay. Got a quick question.
Yes.
Two, actually. Well, question and statement. All of the discussion that has happened up until I started speaking was regarding the alternate, correct?
So we have the main base bid of
Like all the
handicap ramps.
Yeah, the ramps and all that other stuff, and then this is the alternate.
And then the citizens' comment and discussion is solely about this North Locust sidewalk.
I want to talk about the other stuff.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. I mean, I've been on council when I think you guys were at like 30 of these things, and you're rapidly approaching completing everything in the city to be ADA accessible. I appreciate all the years that you guys have been doing this year in, year out, every year. I've been noticing in the town it's making a difference, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you. So this contract will buy 44 more ramps, 3,800 square feet of new sidewalk and ramp area, and about 800 new feet of curb gutter and sidewalk. And that will complete the program.
Additional comments or questions?
I want to say, I understand that there's no replacing a mature tree. I mean, there just isn't. And I appreciate you working with the homeowners, and I am supportive of this, but I understand. We have a lot of mature trees at our home, and you just can't replace one. It's not going to be the same.
I echo those comments exactly. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. One
Thank you.
abstention. The resolution's adopted. Please work with the homeowners. I appreciate that. Ordinance's first reading. You may read the first one.
An ordinance accepting the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approving the conditional use for a major change to the 2009 Talawanda High School conditional use to add bus garage / maintenance facility in the city of Oxford with conditions.
Okay, this is first reading, so we don't need motions, and we will turn to Sam.
Good evening, everyone. May was a busy month for Planning Commission, so we have 3 first readings tonight. The first one, and we have a significantly reduced set of slides, so they'll go quickly. Since Planning Commission spent a lot of time on these. You may remember in February there was a road easement discussed, and council approved a relocation of a roadway easement on this private property that's owned by Talawanda School District. And the reason for that, I'll show you on the map here, was for a proposal from the school district to relocate the current bus storage facility and garage from Chestnut Street, where it is now, to the current high school property to serve the district for busing, storage, staffing, maintenance. And so you can see on the map highlighted where it would be located. The high school was approved by council in 2009 and then completed in 2012 and 13 as a conditional use permit, which is just kind of the typical process for schools and restaurants, those types of uses that are special, that require some additional detailed analysis to determine their level of appropriateness in a certain area. And so because of that conditional use approval in 2009 for the school, it was determined that adding a bus storage facility to that would be an amendment. So that was actually discussed administratively and then at Planning Commission for a potential minor or administrative amendment, and it was determined that that would need to come through the full process for a major amendment, which finds its way back to council. So here we are now. Planning Commission did a thorough review of it, and actually some of, and I'll go to the next slide there, some of the comments that were provided in March in the discussion of a potential minor amendment resulted in some revisions, which were then accepted by the majority of the commission at the May meeting. So some of the aspects that were in discussion had to do with potential noise or light, traffic, kind of the typical things that a conditional use discussion should contain. You know, what are the impacts to the surrounding property owners and residents, those types of things. So the school district and their consultant added additional trees to the surrounding perimeter of the site, and also some privacy slats to the chain link fence, if you're familiar with those fences that have the kind of the vinyl slats in them. So this project would include storage for 42 buses, about a half dozen staff, and it's a 7,500 square foot building. You can kind of see in the center here, which is where the maintenance barn would be, kind of a pole barn type structure that would match some of the colors of the district. And then there's existing trees along the driveway, and they would be adding some more. And then the front half facing the driveway would be like the staff and visitor parking, and then the back part would be the bus storage. So waivers and conditions were discussed and added into the recommendation. You may be familiar with the high school parking lot. It's not designed like a lot of the other parking lots in town. It has some of the low impact features, some of which are being taken over to this design, but to a little bit lesser degree, just to help to prevent some of the damage to the grass in the area. And then the easement for the roadway, which had already been approved by council, that has been drafted up and ready to be signed, and that's a condition as well. And what that would do was would allow for the public interest to be served by maintaining roadway in the future to the east of the garage rather than through the middle of it, if you remember that discussion. And that is all I have, and Shauna Tefelsky is here as well. If you have any questions for her from the district, happy to answer any questions.
Super, thank you very much. And we'll ask if anyone from the public would like to address this. Did you want to make a comment or just here for questions?
I'm literally just here to answer any of your questions.
All right, I didn't want to take away your opportunity.
No, I appreciate you asking and for this opportunity.
Okay. I see no one jumping up to take that opportunity, so we'll move on to discussion and questions by council. Planning members want to give us a summary there of your discussion. Was it well received?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main, just to summarize so you can understand, one, I think at first the Planning Commission had debates about whether this was minor or not, but because of the scale of it, it was difficult for many commission members to put this in the minor administrative category, given the number of buses, and so it came through. But in that initial conversation, the main conditional use is really about, are there negative secondary impacts that you have to mitigate? And if you can mitigate them, they probably should be approved. And the main thing with this is that it is a bus facility with buses that will be idling and turning on lights at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 or 5 or whatever it is with the noise and the lights and some fumes. So it was visual, but they came back and so there's the tree planting schedule in the slats is really meant to mitigate. There still will be noise from buses. There was a specific effort to reach out to the owners or the managers of what's the aviary and to try to get a sense of whether the neighbors had concerns about it, but I guess no one showed up, whatever that means. So yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of a facility, this is the reason why this is a conditional use, this is a residential area, this is zoned R1, and this is a kind of industrial sort of facility, but it's part of what school districts do and have to do in 2022. And I think there's some hope that there will be a time in not too distant future where they won't be diesel buses, but they'll be electric buses, and that will address one of the concerns. So yeah, I think that ultimately the Planning Commission, I think there was some qualms about the way things might have gone differently about the easement or whatever, but I think the majority was in support of this.
Okay. Anyone else want to address this? Glenn?
Is there a net job creation from this facility?
I don't know the answer to that.
Go ahead.
What's the question?
I bet we can have an answer. Any new jobs?
Is there a net? Okay.
No, it's net neutral.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious if
For the
there
record,
could
tell
be some
the
new jobs.
clerk your name.
I'm sorry, I'm Shauna Tefelsky. I'm at 2114 Dana Drive, and I represent Talawanda City School District.
Including custodial or any other administrative services, like no net new jobs at all?
No, there's no new jobs. We're literally moving our Chestnut Hub, the Peterman services there, as well as our custodial and maintenance. We're literally moving them from one spot to the next.
Understood.
Okay. I'll stay here for any other questions?
Questions while she's here for the school district. So, when the high school was there, it was right next to the high school.
Yes.
So this will take it to that state again.
Basically, a couple 100 feet extra, but yes, it will.
Thank you.
And just to Glenn's point, I mean, there is an economic development piece to this because the school district will be vacating a piece of property that it's been occupying at South Locust, which is going to transform a lot, the BCRTA multimodal facility, our investments in Amtrak. And so in terms of the pieces of the puzzle, there will now be a piece that's available. I mean, it's Miami owns it, right?
Miami currently owns it. We lease it from them.
So, you know, that it will open the door to something potentially future in that location in South Locust.
Main Street.
Instead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think you meant to say, yeah.
That's fine.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay. I do think it does make space for the new multimodal facility, and so there's a side advantage on that. Okay, we will hear it next meeting. We'll have a second reading and a vote on it. First reading.
An An ordinance approving a conditional use permit application to allow for a new hotel to be located at 5470 College Corner Pike, Oxford, Ohio, 45056 with conditions.
Thank you. Sam?
Okay. So another conditional use. This one for a new Holiday Inn Express. So you're probably familiar with the Wildberry warehouse in Ambassador's Point Church area on College Corner Pike. And this would be directly past or to the left of Ambassador's Point Church and across from Wildberry. And the proposal is a 83-room hotel, which requires a conditional use process and recommendation from Planning Commission, which is what you have in front of you. The zoning shows general business and light industrial and residential, so it's kind of a mixture of uses around the area, which is a good reason to have the conditional use to determine if there are negative impacts, as we talked about before, that can or cannot be mitigated. The site plan that you have on the screen there was actually the one that was reviewed by Planning Commission, but it's not the one that you have now because of some changes that have been made. This particular one has gone through several revisions, a lot of which actually happened before it came to Planning Commission because of staff feedback. And so there was additional conversation that happened at the Planning Commission about access to the site from College Corner Pike and the number of curb cuts. There was discussion about whether additional parking spaces would help to mitigate that additional access and to navigate around the site. And so what we ended up with, which was actually the result of a condition of a recommendation that we intended to bring, but since the revised site plan addressed that, that condition has been recommended to be removed. And so that's for that second curb cut. So again, here you can see the plantings around the area, just to kind of give it a little bit more life. I included that slide instead of just purely the engineered site plan, but there are plenty of other drawings that are available and that you probably have seen in the packet or online. This next slide shows elevation views. There is a height limit in the zoning district, 45 feet, and the request is to exceed that by an additional 4 feet, and you can see where those portions of what we call the parapet wall will go up above that to 49 feet. There's another one of the glass requirement for the general business district, or the glazing requirement. That's an additional waiver as well. When that was written, I believe it was intended to speak mostly to kind of the one-story storefront, so you didn't just have the blank walls. But since this has several stories with glazing, I think it was seen that would accomplish a similar purpose. So we're not looking at completely blank walls, but it doesn't meet the 60% window square footage either. The sign issue was discussed a fair bit as well. As far as the square footage, it's been a popular theme over the past few months with different cases. We do spend a lot of time on that, and I'm glad to see that in a sense, because it does show our attention to detail that we have for our design of the community and aesthetics. So the one that's here on the lower image shows the original proposal, which is several fold higher than what would be allowed by zoning code. And you can see in the next slide how it's been reduced. This was another item that has been addressed by the revisions, so the applicant very quickly turned around those revisions, and that made it easy for the process to continue on without additional discussion. So that's what we have here. One of the commission members actually referenced another hotel in town, and so that was how we ended up with that. So again, it was, and I'll go back to the site plan, the access, and there was a pretty good pro and con discussion about additional access and whether that would be negative. What were the trade-offs for having that additional access point because the multi-use path there and that potential conflict? And it was determined that that having the additional curb cut and vehicular access, especially for emergency services and also for patrons, would be the greater good in this case. And so that is what you have here in front of you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this? Anna, would you like to talk for the petitioner?
Yes. Good evening, I'm Etta Reed with Bearbecker. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which is High Point Lodging. My address is 110 South College Avenue. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation. I think staff did a very good job, but I'd definitely answer any questions coming up. But I did want to just give you a little feel for what the quality that High Point can bring to the Oxford community and some of the economics that this hotel will bring also. So High Point Lodging, they have 40 years of experience. They are a family-owned and operated business. They do, this is their livelihood. They're sitting here in the audience ready to answer any questions you have. They also build and operate these hotels. As Sam has indicated, it is an 83 guest room hotel. They do have a number of suites, extended stay suites, so something that really a lot of the hotels in town do not have. They also offer up a 50-person meeting room as well as another smaller boardroom so that you could have some conferences, smaller scale, but still has some conferences and bring some visitors into the community. They have a fitness center, indoor pool, and a business center. Here's just some of the nice photos of what you can expect to see. You know, very colorful, inviting lobby. Plenty of seating for your guests to kind of hang out. Very up-to-date, beautiful rooms. Lit hallways. A business center, so if someone is here for a conference, they can continue to operate their business. Fitness center. Just kind of a visual of the outside. Pool. Again, here's your meeting room, as well as a smaller boardroom. Another guest room. Just kind of, this is the sign. As Sam has indicated, we are asking for several waivers. One of them is the signage. We took the ground sign, which is the sign you see here. We've dropped it to 6 feet, which does meet code, so we do not need that waiver anymore. And then with regards to the wall signage, we are still requesting 2, but we reduced the size from almost 17 feet tall down to just over 3 feet tall to be in compliance with what the Hampton Inn has in town. One thing about Holiday Inn Express and Suites, they do have loyal customers so that follow them. So hopefully, you know, once a visitor comes, they'll see how great Oxford is and they'll come back. Some items about the economic impact. This will create 31 jobs, anywhere from food and beverage, front desk, all the way down to management. As you can see, there'll be 6 full-time and 25 part-time employees. They are projecting 25,000 stays a year. And in year 1, that'd be $2.9 million. There are some tax benefits, both to the county and the city with the hotel. They will be adding, again, 83 more rooms, which would bring your count up to just over 400 here in town, which is, you know, really good because we're kind of more in a rural area. We could use more, especially with Spooky Nook coming into Hamilton. Riley, Hanover, Milford Township, the adjoining townships really don't have the hotels. So rather than have the individuals go to Coleraine or Fairfield, even Hamilton, let's bring them here. So this is just some more bullet points. As we mentioned, there's shortage of hotels in Oxford, so this will fill that need. This is a $10 million project. It takes them 2 years to build this hotel. So that's 2 years of just construction workers. They'll use local contractors as much as possible, but you will have some outside contractors. So again, that's just bringing more people into the community and more dollars into Oxford. And then just quickly, as Sam has indicated, this was the previous plan. We had one access point, and then this is the proposed plan that we're asking for approval on tonight. We worked back and forth significantly with the fire chief and staff to really meet the needs, and our original plan had 100 parking spaces. We only lost 1 by adding that access drive. The access drive more to the south or to the right side of the screen will align with Ray's Way, so it will not create like an unsafe situation with an offset intersection. So I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
I have one quick question. I believe that there are streams running through there. Can you show us where those are and how, if any, impact they would have on this project?
Sure. Do you have a pointer?
I have one for rent.
Okay, I'll use the cursor.
Yeah. She's going to confess it.
Oh, pan. Sorry, Mike. It's right over here. There we go. It's right over. It's coming over here in the woods, the area that we are not going to touch.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's all over there, and does this drainage basin then drain into those creeks?
I'm sorry.
Does the drainage basin then drain into the creeks?
Yes, yes, it will. And there is a drainage. There's a 48-inch pipe here and a smaller pipe coming out of this catch basin here. Now that we have to put an access point in here, we're going to have to kind of fill that area in. So if you've been out there, you've seen that depressed area. We're going to connect these pipes up and clean that up and there. But yes, all the drainage will essentially pretty much go to this detention basin, which will be dry, and then outlet into the drainage way.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to address this proposal? Seeing none, questions, comments from council?
I think I saw some palm trees and water. If you could do that, I'm all in.
The slideshow answered all the questions I had. It seems like a net positive to the community.
So here's just a question, and I really respect, there was a lot of back and forth about the right way to handle. I mean, just so you understand what the logic was, is from a fire safety point of view, the desire is to have more than one point of ingress and egress to a site. But on the flip side, when you have something like a multi-use path, you're trying to limiting the number of access points. This is in part why College Corner Pike is a little bit messy, because you've got a lot of points of ingress and egress. So there was a way, the debate was like, is there a way to do this shy of 2 entrances? But that's fine. The conditional use doesn't get into the level, but like, is there signage then to mitigate the potential conflict point with the user on the trail? Like in terms of like the stop bar being behind the sidewalk. Again, it's not to that level here, but I'm sure that the multimodal design guidelines that are available from the state DOT, probably there's a way that you can, because what's going to happen is people are going to pull across to get to the street, and then they'll be blocking. So thinking about that, and it doesn't need to be a condition, but because now we're increasing points of contact on the trail, it would be nice if you use best practices to mitigate that. Here's just a question that's totally just occurred to me, and it's not apropos of our code. Are hotels installing electric vehicle charging as an amenity for their clients? Because I imagine it has to be a growing demand. Again, this is not at all part of the approval process. It's just pure curiosity.
Will that affect your decision?
Yeah, it doesn't affect the decision, but I'm just curious whether is that, we don't require it by code, but I think I see a lot of people driving to campus with their kids in electric vehicles. It's just something to think about. I think there might be demand for it.
I think you're right. I can tell you, it's almost impossible to even get an electric car right now because the demand is so high.
And I just think that the people arrive, and they often arrive from distances such that they would want to charge it. We have, so we don't have a ton of infrastructure officer right now. We're trying to get that. But thank you for working with staff. I know there was a lot of back and forth. I think this is going to, as somebody who's on the parents page, I see the demand, the hot market, and people trading hotel rooms with each other. And so it would be really nice if we had a town where people could find a place to stay. And as Jason will also attest, this will help us with our Airbnb conversion housing affordability problem. I'd rather people stay in a Holiday Inn Express than in a converted house. So thank you.
Yeah, this is not designed to compete with houses. It just may have that impact. I just want to congratulate you for coming to our town and building the hotel. And when I visit this is totally irrelevant. When I visit my in-laws, we always stay at the Holiday Inn Express, and so you chose a good brand because I think they have high standards, and we always know what to expect when you get there, and so I think it has a good chance of success.
Thank you. I would second what David said. If you could put some electric chargers, that would be amazing.
Yeah, council would be really appreciative.
And then also, if you could make it safe so that cyclists are not hit, that'd be awesome. My husband was personally hit at the front of an apartment because a car pulled up. So I'd appreciate that as well.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we thank you very much for the presentation. Again, that will be decided upon at our next meeting. And we have a first reading.
An ordinance accepting the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approving the final plan development for Owl's Landing along Brookville Road in the city of Oxford with conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. Sam,
Okay,
this is your third.
this is it. Third one. So this is a final plan development you've seen a few times. So Owl's Landing, it's a 22-acre site that went through several steps. So annexation, zoning, preliminary plan development. There's a little bit of a timeline there. And the applicant reminded the Planning Commission of the length of the process and has asked us to consider revisions to that. So so that's, if you're interested in what it takes to get through the process, there's where we're at now. This is actually, there's still another step too. There's in addition to the vote for this plan development, there's also the division of the land itself, which is the plat. They actually, even after this is approved, still would not be able to sell lots because this is a plan development and a subdivision. So the site itself, which is a lot of open farmland and a farm site. So it's in 3 parcels, consolidation of 22 acres. This is the preliminary plan, which you have already approved. And as I go to the next slide, you can see that there's very little change. Just a little bit more detail on the topographic lines. And then as I flip back and forth from the original preliminary to the approved, you can see on the east side, there's been some additional plantings added based on some comments and suggestions from the Planning Commission and City Council. And so that has been done. And other than that, there's really no changes. So the staff and Planning Commission found that it substantially conformed to the preliminary plan.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone from the petitioner who'd like to talk with us? Yeah. Welcome.
Good evening, Oxford City Council. John Baer with Baer Becker, 110 South College Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Todd Hall. Unfortunately, he had a scheduling conflict this evening, or else he would have been here. But I just want to extend on behalf of Todd and myself, we appreciate everyone's time. As Sam showed, there's quite a few steps in the process, and we appreciate everyone's time in reviewing this along the way. So if you have any detailed questions, I'm here for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone from the public, anyone else who would like to address this proposal? Seeing none, questions or comments from council? We've seen it all before, so it's probably the same thing we've seen before. Anyone? Seeing none, thank you very much. Again, we'll deal with that second reading at our next meeting. We do have one second reading for this meeting. May I read it?
An ordinance authorizing the tax budget for the year 2023 and directing that the same be transmitted to the Butler County Auditor.
Is there a motion to adopt it? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. You don't have anything else to say?
No, it's
do you?
promised to have nothing,
Yeah,
but if you have any questions.
You gave a nice long dissertation on this. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address any of these numbers? Seeing none, any discussion?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's just a fiscal exercise that we're in a healthy position. So as we enter the budgeting process, trying to figure out how to spend the money that we have, we do it from we just have to answer to the state that we are not in distress, and we are not, thankfully. So
We have challenges ahead.
We have challenges, but you know, for other cities, this wouldn't be just a pro forma exercise. I mean, if we were in distress, this would be red flag time, and luckily we're well managed, so we're not
Still need to hire some firefighters and do some other things. Okay. You may call the roll.
Mr. Ellerby?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Mr. Prethridge?
Yes.
Ms. Ragu?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mayor Snavely?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance is adopted. Thank you very much, Joe. And we will move to announcements and communications, and I'll start with City Manager Elliott.
All right, thank you. Recently, council adopted legislation, as you know, to reopen our designated outdoor refreshment area. But usually the microphone does a little better than that, but I guess I'll have to be very close to it, so I apologize if you couldn't hear me earlier. But anyway, you adopted legislation to reopen our door without a closing date, and we had stated at that time that we would be bringing forth a new application to amend the boundaries. So we did file that with the city clerk recently, and we did post a public notice. It'll be appearing in the Journal News on June the 6th and June 13th, stating that it's available in the clerk's office and also on our website to take a look at it. And then on July 19th, you'll be able to consider that expansion of the door. And so the only change is the expansion of the boundary to include 4 additional blocks from Beach to Elm Street. And so I do want to thank Seth, assistant to the city manager, because he did a lot of the legwork in putting the application together on that. A couple of other things are municipal income tax collection. As you know, we have a contract with the Regional Income Tax Agency, RETA, to administer our local income tax. This service, I believe, has proven to be very effective and efficient in the collection and administration of our income tax. In 2021, RETA collected a little over $9.7 million, and that's for both the general fund and the fire and EMS fund, with an administrative cost of $110,892. This cost represents 1.14% of the city's collection total. We have an agreement with RETA that calls for a 3% retainage, so we'll get a refund amount of $178,668 from RETA. So I just wanted to share that with you. A couple of other things I wanted to share. Jessica and Casey and I met recently to discuss expanding the child care service, daycare service that we provide at the Tri. And so probably at the next meeting, we'll be introducing legislation to create a full-time position there, along with keeping one part-time position. This expansion will, I believe, allow us to add 4 more children at our daycare. It's a drop in the bucket, but it is helping with the daycare situation. And the reason we'll need to bring legislation in, as you know, we have a number of positions outlined in our pay ordinance, and so we would be creating a new position before we introduce new legislation, which we'll do in the fall. But I want to make sure you're on board, because not only will it increase a full-time position or create one, but we'll also need a supplemental appropriation to do it too, because we'd like to begin it with the school year. So I wanted you to know that. Ms. Snell asked the question about conforming boundaries, and it's something that we've discussed before, but I don't believe we've gone into detail publicly. So the notion here is that unlike Middletown, unlike Hamilton, unlike Trenton, we're still part of our township. Those other communities that I mentioned have separated from their township a long time ago. They did what's called conforming boundaries. And I proposed that several times. And the reason for that is that if you think about it, we get no services from the township. In fact, we provide services to them. For example, we take care of their dispatching. And we also store salt for them. We provide fuel, both diesel and regular gasoline, at no cost. So the idea here is that by conforming our boundaries, the residents of Oxford would no longer pay that inside millage, which total for the township, I believe, amounts to about $80,000 a year. So that is why I've recommended that to City Council. We would save that money. We would have to approach the County Budget Commission to see if they would in turn allow us to capture that money, if you will. If not, it would result in a decrease in individual property taxes for those individual property taxpayers. So I think it's made sense. We've discussed it briefly at our retreat. We're planning to bring some legislation in soon on that, and we'll have a discussion. I believe it would probably take an ordinance. I'm working with the city attorney to put that legislation together. And of course, if it's an ordinance, it's 2 readings. But that's the notion behind the conforming the boundaries, if you will. And that's all I have this evening, unless you have some questions for me. Yes?
Can I ask you about Rita? Is there any other entity that would handle that local income tax, or is it just them?
There's the clearinghouse, CCA. I forget the exact abbreviations for it, but Hamilton, I think there have been several communities that have used them and went to Rita. So really only 2 other places. Now, a lot of cities administer their own income tax, which I think is difficult to justify because, number one, a business income tax form is a little different than an individual. And when I was in Washington Courthouse, we administered the income tax. And I had to have 2 individuals for a community smaller than the city of Oxford, one to do the business taxes and one to do the local income taxes, and we still needed a CPA to help us from time to time. So I think utilizing Rita is a very, very good idea, contracting it out. But I believe it's called the Clearinghouse, CCA.
Yeah, it's located up in Claymont, and there's a lot of people that run CCA.
Yeah, Rita serves, I believe I wrote in...
200-some communities.
Yes, yeah. Over 330 Ohio communities are served by Rita.
As a personal note, it's been challenging if you work in another city but you live here.
Yeah.
If your business is not withholding the right amount, you'll get hit with a huge fine, one that they might not tell you about for years later, and then they've accrued interest, so which ends up being thousands of dollars. So I don't know if there's any way we can pass that along.
Well, there's an appeal process too. I mean, if your employer wasn't withholding the right amount. But I understand it's difficult if you work in several communities, and much as I didn't favor it, I think that had something to do with the state stepping in to, deal with business taxes and collecting that for cities. And but I understand that's difficult. And even if we administered on our own, it would still be difficult because you got to pay to each different community. We have different rates. We have maybe different credits, so on and so forth.
Mainly just wondering if there was a competitive market, but it doesn't sound like there is.
Yeah, just 2, and I think Rita is clearly the front runner.
Thank you. Mike?
Mr. Elliott asked that I provide a quick update on our water softening project for our water utility.
Thank you.
As you recall, we looked at 4 different technologies to soften water at the plant and landed on membrane softening. And upon further evaluation, we wanted to study whether we could buy wholesale water from the city of Hamilton and transport that water more cost effectively to the city. We looked at several routes. Pardon me. Hamilton's plant is down here. We looked at running up 127. We looked at going up 177, and we looked at going up 27. And none of those options was an attractive option versus softening here in the city. We also looked briefly at Southwest Regional's plant, and they cannot provide the capacity without upgrading their plant. So if we're going to spend money, we might as well upgrade our own plant. So this is difficult to read, I know, but just to give you a base cost of 20-year costs, if we bought water from another agency and transported it to Oxford, it's about $52 million over 20 years. If we build our own plant and manage it ourselves, it's about half of that, $24 million. So if you go through the lifetime of the plant at 50 years, the savings are staggering there. So it's very evident we should design our own plant, get the proper permits from the EPA, and keep this in-house. So as far as next steps, we're almost complete with a request for qualifications, and we'll publish that various engineering firms will provide us their qualifications, and we'll negotiate a contract with them, of which ultimately City Council will approve that contract. We expect to make a recommendation to you sometime in August for a design firm. Concurrently with that, we need to plan for the installation of an additional well at our 7-mile well field. The membrane technology requires about 25% more raw water for the process above and beyond what the consumer demands. So we will be working on that. And also an important piece of this is getting the EPA to not only approve the softening portion, but also the effluent from the plant, what we would discharge to 4 Mile Creek. So we'll be working on all of those ends, and hope to have a recommendation for you in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure many people in the community are anxious.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
So will this be able to resolve any issues with drought conditions and lowered water levels?
Well, having an additional well will give us more raw water, so.
I wasn't sure if that would suffice, since we need extra percentage to handle the process as well.
Yes, so we will design this with our largest well out of service. So it is rare that we take a well out of service, and if it is, it's typically just for a few weeks. But we will have ample water for the short term. Oxford is isolated from the Great Miami Aquifer, so raw water is precious here, and it's difficult to get to. And if we have to pump from 7 Mile, it's a lot more expensive than our local resource.
And I know when we were talking about water softening before talking about the pipeline, there were 3 different options, and one of them was the type that can take care of the forever chemicals, the PFAS. Is this
That's the technology that we're proposing, is the membrane softening.
Okay.
It has the most potential of any of the softening to remove particulates of any type. So
that's awesome.
It costs a little bit more to operate, but it is the best.
Thank you. So, Mike, we were talking earlier about the ARPA and energy efficiency. Going with this I was just looking at your table, it does include additional energy demands, and maybe that's probably, you need 25% extra amount of water to pump, and also for the treatment. Can we do it as a bid alternate, for example? I mean, the water treatment plant could be suitable for something like solar development. And I just, as part of the long-term investment in this, have you looked at how we're gonna power this and how that fits with our climate goals?
Well, solar could be a part of what our needs are, but water uses a lot of power. Wastewater uses lots and lots of power. So I've told Mr. Elliott we will have an item in our CIP this year to hire a consultant to let us know what can we realistically expect if we chose to put solar at our facilities, and is it cost effective? And right now we can say, yeah, we can put some solar on the roof at the water plant, but it's not going to be enough to drive those pumps. The motors are bigger than I am. So.
Yeah, no, I just think that since we're going into the capital project, it would be really nice to have firm numbers on what that kind of stuff would be, so you could figure out, does it fit in the budget, and how. You've got a lot of land adjacent to the water treatment plant. So yeah, just thinking about how you can meet the power goals over the long term and how that could help us achieve our neutrality goals. It seems like now's the time to flesh that out.
Yes, we will have a line item for evaluation there.
And would that consultant look at other renewable energy or just solar?
Well, council has said they want solar on every city property, so that is what we were evaluating.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. JJ? Joe? Thank you. Thank you, Casey. Sam?
it was in my weekly report, but I wanted to verbally report that the Episcopal Retirement Project was not funded by Ohio Housing Finance for the Western Knolls site. So we haven't met with them yet, but we'll be doing that and seeing what their next steps are, and then we'll decide what we should recommend to council, whether to extend the option to purchase or think about something else for the Western Knolls property. So just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. That's
We have two announcements this evening. First is just during the meeting, if anyone's streaming and it was a little glitchy tonight, we just noticed during the meeting that the clerk of council's internet kept going in and out, and she is the one who's like streaming from her device. So we got it fixed several times, but there might be several little glitches. So we don't know why, we don't know what's going on, but we will look into it. Hence the audiovisual review that we're doing very, very soon. Second, the more happy news. This Friday is our first Red Brick Friday of the season, and we are partnering with Miami University Alumni Office. And in the past, during Alumni Weekend, they've had like a big event down on campus, and they've really stayed down there. We're really happy to be partnering this year, and this year the big Friday event is town. And so they're doing like a Remember When walk and all these kind of things like, you know, what used to be here and that kind of stuff. They're bringing in a band. They are expecting quite a good crowd, so let's hope for good weather, and please join us for the first Red Brick Friday. Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. Heather?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Glenn?
I'm just looking forward to Friday.
Should be fun. Alex?
A couple things. One, I am also looking forward to Red Brick Friday, both as an alumni and a city council member, so I guess I will be remembering when. Probably not that excitedly. It's already been too long since I graduated. The second thing is just, I kind of alluded to this when we were talking about the school resource officers, but for those who don't know, my work is in youth violence prevention, and so I would be remiss to not mention how heart-wrenching and terrifying the events in Texas and Buffalo have been. And when I was running for council, I got asked a lot, you know, based on what you do for work, is there anything that you plan on doing insofar as gun violence goes? And the short answer to that was, you know, legislatively, we can't do a lot in town. But the longer answer is that I do, where I find faith in these times is in communities and the way that communities come together. So with what Councilor Franklin is proposing for these living room conversations, I think this would be a great space for us to come together, whether you have kids, don't have kids, work in a school, don't work in a school, own a gun, don't own a gun. These are conversations that we can all have together, because the bottom line is keeping our children in our community and our community at large safe. So stay tuned. Councilor Franklin and I are going to do some work on maybe scheduling some sessions over the summer to have these conversations, and I look forward to digging in and figuring out what we can all do together to keep each other safe. Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to Carol Michael. Not only is she the creator and founder of ShareFest many, many years ago and saved literally so many tons, like hundreds of tons of stuff from going to a landfill and to nonprofits who give it to people who need it, but she's also really strong. So she can pick up a queen-size mattress on her own and shove it into a minivan, and I am super impressed. And I think she's a testament to what happens when one person says, there's a problem and I'm going to do something about it, and it's made a huge impact. And I think that the thing that I can take away from this is that what can we do about the things that we can't find a home for, which is why Carol was picking up every single mattress and shoving it in her minivan and delivering it to someone tonight or earlier today who needed it. Mattresses do not have a home. Whenever you throw them away, there's nowhere we can recycle it. There's no recipient organization that will take it. Maybe we can get lucky on Facebook if someone is in need, but that's few and far between. We are a college town. There's a high turnover. There are many, as Sam has taught me, there's many really nice apartment complexes in town who reuse mattresses. They have nice covers on it. They're really nice apartments and a lot nicer than some of the places that don't reuse mattresses. And so I would challenge us to how can we, from a policy and a legislative perspective, try to keep mattresses out of the landfill? They should be lasting 12 to 15 years. They are not a disposable item to be thrown away every single year. If you look at, and we might not have seen the trash as much this year because we're a little bit beyond COVID, and our trash pickup was not interrupted, and there were more huge dumpsters. But I have tons of pictures if you like to see them of what those dumpsters look like, and there's a ton of mattresses and other stuff that should have gone to Sheriff Fest. But I would challenge us to look forward to what we can do from a legislative perspective to incentivize landlords with high turnover to reuse mattresses.
Thank you.
Two things. I went to the OCAC, the Oxford Community Arts Center, movie night, family movie night outdoors last Friday night, and it was a lot of fun. We saw The Mitchells versus the Machines. I didn't even know it existed, but it was a great fun movie. So look out for the other ones coming up. The other thing I wanted to say is that a couple weeks ago I got a call from a community member who wanted me to share some compliments with one of our police officers. She saw him interact with an individual in our community who has some mental health challenges, and she thought he handled it very well. But she was also concerned about this individual because he's a large person and he yells and shouts a lot and hasn't been violent with anyone, but she's worried that someone could be violent toward him if they feel intimidated by him. And so we really definitely have some mental health challenges within our community. But I was able to visit OPD and saw the body cam footage from Officer Bobby Reese as he interacted with this gentleman, and it was textbook. He de-escalated. It was really well done. And I know our officers do first aid mental health training, and it's showing them, but they can't do it all by themselves. So I'm really excited about the police social liaison position. We've had 40 wonderful applicants. I think you're down to maybe 3. But in that one day, I learned that there were 4 calls for this one gentleman. And he's not the only person in our community that needs support and services. So I just want to continue to compliment OPD on the good job they're doing, but understand that they need resources, and we're going to try and work to do that. We've lost some services in town. Butler Behavioral Health was at least here once a week, and I think they were closed a bit during the pandemic, but now they're no longer here. So we need to find solutions to try and get some of these services closer to home. That's all.
Thank you.
Nothing for me tonight.
So 2 things. One, I just want to thank Michelle for asking the question that I've been asking, which is, what is our relationship with the township and what are we doing and why? And I think that I'm glad to hear we're asking the question. I really do think looking at a specific piece of legislation, I think it's worth having a wide-ranging conversation about what are the various goals and the pros and cons. I think there's some clear fiscal pros, and at one level makes a lot of logical sense, but I think that it will change the dynamic of the relationship, and I just think we need to think through what that would mean and whether there might not be potential negative repercussions that we're not thinking about. So I think I want to take a 360 view on it, so that we weigh all the different things. And for that, I think, like, if we're going to spend an hour in a work session talking about what's the best way to let people plant grasses in their front yard, I think we could spare a work session to talk about our relationship with the township. The second thing is it is super frustrating when, I feel like I'm talking about gun violence and as a municipality how limited what we can do. But I think I'm going to put together just a do something resolution to ask our legislators in Columbus and DC to do something. They so often preempt or take control over the things that we cannot control, and then they don't exercise the problem-solving ability. So it may just be a symbolic gesture, but I'm going to bring it forward, and just because somebody's got to do something, and I would hope our legislators in Columbus and DC would do something.
Thank you. I have some thank yous. I want to thank Casey Waddell. He did a wonderful job at the opening and made sure that I didn't die when I started the Aquatic Center. I actually had a really good time, and I thank you very much, Casey. The Aquatic Center just looks great if you haven't been there.
Did you do a cannonball?
I did not. I told you I wouldn't, and I didn't. I did go down the big yellow slide, however, which, that was pretty cool. I saw video of previous mayors doing the cannonball, and I think the slide's a better choice. All right. I want to also thank Jessica for all the work that you and the other staff have done to prepare us for the work session we had today. We know it's a lot of work, and we really appreciate what you do. I also want to thank all the people who applied to boards and commissions. If you heard at the beginning when we read off all those nominations, it may not be clear that there were a lot of other people who also volunteered, and we appreciate it. And it's unfortunate that we can't find places for all the people who were interested, and that is a much better situation than one in which we have vacancies and nobody is interested in filling them. So I want to thank everybody who applied, and especially those who were not appointed, and it wasn't really a reflection on you so much as it was the rich nature of the pool from which we selected. Lastly, I want to let you know that the city manager and I will be absent at our next meeting, and that is because we're representing the city of Oxford in Differdange, Luxembourg for their sister city celebration, and so we will bring all the good wishes from the people of Oxford. I know you wish them well, I know they wish us well, and so we'll be there for their celebration. It culminates at the Grand Duke's holiday, and those who've been to Luxembourg know what that means. We'll be in Differdange, not in Luxembourg City, so it will not be nearly as chaotic. And then we'll be back. If there's no other business, I would recommend a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?